Well, good morning, everyone. Well, good morning, everyone. We are live at Collecting Prince the podcast, and today is a very special day. It is March 21st, 2026, and that's a significant day for several reasons that we'll get into. But today's show is dedicated to all things Purple Rain, and so we'll have a conversation about some of the significant points of the album, and then later on the movie, and have a little bit of fun today and see some artifacts that will help us understand perhaps the significance of uh, of that particular project from Prince. But good morning, Brian Walton, host of Collecting Prince the podcast. It's great to see you here today on Saturday. Again, March 21st, and we are going to have some fun. Today is also certainly want to give a shout out to DJ Premier, whose birthday is today. Also, this is the 20th anniversary of Prince's, I believe, 31st album project, 3121. That debuted at that time, and that debuted at number one on the Billboard 200. So that was a big deal. And I believe that was 2026, of course, 2006. So now we are going to talk about a little bit of the lore around Purple Rain. And so Purple Rain was a huge, huge, huge commercial success for Prince. And it really thrust him into the center of popular culture at that time. And so we're talking about a time when music was really the background and the landscape of what um, everything that everyone was listening to, and so it cut across all sorts of genres. And Prince, uh, though he was known at the time, Purple Rain really thrust him to superstardom, which was a big deal. And we'll talk about how big of a deal that was because some of the accomplishments that the album had, and as well as the film itself, are just amazing to think about in this day and time. Purple Rain, the album, was released June 25th, 1984. And then a little bit later, the movie came out on July 27th. And what's significant about it is that shortly thereafter, in August, it reached number one on the Billboard charts, and it spent 24 weeks, 24 consecutive weeks at number one, which was unheard of. But more importantly, over time, it sold 25 million copies. But most impressively, the box office returns from the movie, $68 million was made off of the film. And so that's significance. That's the most successful music concert based film in history. But more importantly, it let people know who this guy from Minneapolis was. For people that didn't already know who he was, and that's what made it so significant. So we're going to talk about Purple Rain, not just the stats, but a little bit about some of the songs that made that album project so impressive, but also some of the artifacts, which is a big deal because Purple Rain was certainly the largest commercial success for Prince, but it also marked a time when Warner Brothers uh, amped up the marketing for it. And so there are so many different things if you're a collector that you can dive into. You can dive into the different types of media and releases from the music side, but you can also dive into the film and video releases as well. And so that means all of the promotional materials for stores, posters, and all of that. They just made it. They really got it out there. And so Purple Rain is significant to many people, especially if you were coming of age at that time, because many people recount the first time that they saw the movie, or if they got a chance to see the tour. And so certainly I can remember the first time that I heard the songs, and when I still remember the first time when I heard "When Doves Cry" for the first time, I said, "Oh my goodness, this is a massive." And what's so interesting about that is that song has no actual bass line, which is crazy. And so they were, Warner Brothers was not interested in releasing that particular song because it didn't have that musical element, but it was a huge hit. So Prince knew what he was doing, and that was a major smash to really kick off the coming hits on the album because there were so many. So one of the things that we'll do is, well, I get a chance today to spend a little bit more time, not just talking about the stats and the trivia, which is important, but it's more important if you're a collector to see some of the things that are out there that you could either collect, decide to collect, or if you're trying to find something, uh, it's good to know what's out there. And there's so much for Purple Rain. Because again, such a big commercial success. And then once they saw the success, of course, they thought about more things that they could produce for the public to consume. And so we'll get started with a few of those artifacts now. Just a few of the artifacts, because again, there are so many. And so one of the things I considered today was showing some of the vinyl, which there is a plethora of vinyl out there because of course, the recordings were not just made available here in the United States, and so you had European pressings, pressings in, South America, pressings in Africa, Jamaica, and so there's so many different variations depending on the country and the versions that are out there. So there's so much media, especially when it comes to your 7-inch records, the 45s, if you're talking about 12-inch records or the LPs. But also, we know that cassettes were very, very popular at the time. And more importantly, also 8-track tape. So this is an 8-track tape of Purple Rain. So you get a chance to see that and see what was there. And so this will be our first look at what is actually on the project. And so it kicks off with Let's Go Crazy. And Let's Go Crazy was actually co-written by Wendy and Lisa. You have Take Me With You, Computer Blue, Darling Nikki, which was a very controversial song at the time. It actually sparked Tipper Gore's campaign for music censorship, as far as having warnings on music to let people know that it is something that you, especially for younger listeners, that you might caution against. Of course, Purple Rain, I Would Die For You, Baby I'm a Star, When Doves Cry, and The Beautiful Ones. And so this is just a sample. This is an 8-track tape, and there's so much media to show. But what I'm going to show is some things that are probably a little bit less common to see, or certainly things that are out of the stream of just the vinyl records, the cassettes, and so forth. And so there are different people that actually collect advertisements. So this is an actual movie advertisement from the time, from that time frame. And this is promoting the movie. And so you had the album promotion going on, you had the movie promotion going on. And with that, you had things coming out in different formats. For example, this here is an actual sticker. It's an actual sticker, and you actually peel it out of the little outline. And this is an actual sticker promoting Let's Go Crazy. And this is an actual, this is the actual proof for the actual Warner Home Video for the initial VHS cassette produced for Purple Rain. So this is the VHS that you could buy. It was made available later, of course, but this is the actual proof for what would be the box for the VHS cassette. So you get a chance to see that. And they kept that thematic that you saw from When Doves Cry with the flowers. And so that's permanently seared in people's minds as being part of that project. Some other things that we might see, and this is interesting because many of these things I've had put away for some time, and so it's interesting to see some of the things that are here. And so this is actually a thank you card from the World Tour, and so this went out to different people involved with them being successful on the tour, and it says, Prince and the Revolution and crew would like to express our appreciation for your support. This is actually an official card that was sent out. And this is an actual postcard from that time period, of course. And there are a host of buttons and pins that were made at the time. This is actually a small promo for the movie. This shows the cast of characters for the film, but that same image there with Apollonia being covered by the logo. And this is actually a movie promotional booklet from Japan. So this is the Japanese movie promotional booklet. Make sure I don't have a lot of glare there. I can take that out of plastic, but it's still in plastic. And we get a chance to see that. This is a promotional booklet for the movie. So it showed some of the images from the film, as well as information on the characters. And this is an actual movie ticket from Japan for Purple Rain. And so you get the program booklet as well as the ticket for the movie. And that was done for the Japanese market. One of the things that's interesting, especially interesting to collect, that I didn't get into collecting much later, this is for the United States market. And this is actually the songbook. And so in this, it actually breaks down all the music that goes with the songs for the soundtrack for Purple Rain. And so they're keeping with that same. And this is actually this image here with the same background. This is the actual shot for the promotional poster, the actual promotional movie poster for Purple Rain. And so there are some slight variations, but this is the original image that is in the larger poster, the subway version, 40 inches by 60 inches, as well as the standard poster prints. And so that's the original image there. What I also love to collect are the books and the magazines of the time. And so this came out in November 1984. This is a copy of Ebony magazine with Prince on the cover. And this is certainly, you see the Purple Rain motif background and that imagery that we know was released for the promotion of the first single, When Doves Cry. And a little bit later, so this is still riding the wave of success of Purple Rain. This is June 1985. Prince on the cover of Ebony magazine again with imagery from the tour. And so this is one of the photos from the Purple Rain tour that is being used on the cover now that they had already hit the road at this point. And so this is great. All right. And this is actually a smaller songbook. This is actually just the music, words and music for Purple Rain itself. And so a moment ago, you saw the song booklet for the entire soundtrack. This is the much thinner actual just musical score, musical notes for Purple Rain for those that wanted to play it. So those are just some of the items related to it. And so, as we think about the actual album itself, the album was highly successful at the time. You couldn't go more than a minute changing the dial without hearing one of the songs. And so, certainly, the most popular ones were Let's Go Crazy. Take It With You was played quite a bit. Purple Rain, certainly. And When Doves Cry were your top hits. But we still got a good rotation of I Would Die For You as well, and Baby I'm a Star were popular. And so now available, you can get recorded versions or videos from the tour. And many of those were from the Syracuse 1985 tour stop, uh, or the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland, which is my hometown. And so that was great to see that they captured a lot of those music videos. I believe that it's either, I think it's Take Me With You and I Would Die For You were the videos that circulate most frequently are videos and recordings from the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. So Purple Rain, a major hit, but it thrust Prince into the limelight in a way that was unheard of for a popular artist. Certainly one that had some controversy surrounding him. That he was one of the first that was androgynous. Not so much as Boy George, but around that time period. But he also was challenging with political norms and cultural norms at the time with some of the things that he was saying, but also making a statement in the music. And we know later on, he continues to make more statements with Sign of the Times, not only the opening track, but some of the things that are in that two album set there. And so, what's interesting about Purple Rain is that Purple Rain was such a huge commercial success, and so among collectors, I think there's a little bit of standoffishness because it's so out there and so popular that real purists around the Prince collecting are saying, yeah, that was big, but it was so commercial, was so commercial, and that if you ask people what their favorite record, made people say Purple Rain, and collectors are like, ah, yeah, I expected you to say that, but that's because it was out there. But if you are a real Prince fan, it may be your favorite album, but there are so many other things that you could choose from to say, um, things that were impressive. Me personally, I think Purple Rain, I can understand why it was commercially successful, especially at that time. But as far as artistry and far as the power of a project, I think for me, it's a struggle to identify which one's most powerful between 1999 and Sign of the Times. And I think Sign of the Times gets the edge because Adore was just such a massive slow song that really carries its weight today. And so, yeah, Purple Rain, a massive hit, record breaking in popular culture, $68 million made from the film, 25 million copies sold of the LP, which was massive, and that really catapulted him to stardom. In fact, he was the first to come out with that type of movie, because later on, not too long after that, we had Madonna come out starring in film, and then we had Michael Jackson's Moonwalker came out after that as well. So, but Prince was really the first to be able to do that, and to understand that at that point in his career, to be able to have the latitude again to make a film like that was simply amazing, because he had been given so much latitude as a very young artist, to have the freedom to choose his producers, and he ended up producing most of the things himself. But to have that freedom and latitude really showed that, um, regardless of what the traditions were at Warner Brothers Records, they recognized him as such a huge talent that he got away with more than anyone else. And so it would be interesting years later in the story of Prince and Warner Brothers. the real battle that he had with the ability to have more control over his music was interesting because they really did take some chances on him that I don't believe other labels would have done at the time. And so it's very interesting how things work. But, his claim against what was happening with his music and him not having control over the music, that's certainly that's certainly a valid claim to make, and understand that there was and there still is room for the music industry to be more respectful of the artists themselves, and the artists having more control of their own artistry. And that's just not what's negotiated by by contract contentiously. It should be understood that the artist that's creating the art should be able to benefit perpetually over what they themselves have created. But that's for another day and for another time. But Purple Rain was a massive hit. And certainly in the comments, or leave a note and say, what is your connection to Purple Rain? How did it affect you? How was it significant in your life? Because Purple Rain was a big, big, big project, and that's the best way to talk about it, because it's hard to separate really separate the album from the film, because certainly they're intertwined. It's the soundtrack for the film, but more importantly, understanding that those are two separate things that were massive in their own right. So that's what's amazing about Purple Rain. And so it really certainly helped to catapult him to superstardom, known all over the world. And that's really, I believe, the real start of when people started to think, this guy not only might be around for some time, but also, there is some value in collecting what's being produced here, because it really is different. It's significant. It's important. And so I was asked recently at an event, how did I know that the Prince music would be the thing to collect? And the fact is, I didn't know, but I did know it was special. And knowing that it was special was enough for me to start collecting the music. And it turns out that it was a good choice of what you want to hold on to, because it has an incredible amount of value, cultural significance, and I focus more on the cultural significance because it's about collecting our culture, not only just as Americans in this country, certainly as Black American, collecting our culture and retaining ownership of our history and our stories, especially at a time when it's being challenged, whether the truth of reality in our stories is going to get out. And so uh, it's great to have a collection, but understand that the collection is really not just about you. It's about what you can do to share it, what you can do to tell the story of the Black experience in America. And so it's just amazing to see different things that come out from different people. But certainly Purple Rain from Prince is one of those things that were groundbreaking at the time and still holds its weight as a significant point in history, because of the success that project had. And it wasn't fluff. I mean, the music on that album is serious. And so, yeah, you know, very, very interesting project. But certainly in the comments, or if you want to leave a note, definitely let me know how Purple Rain was significant for you. But certainly, I appreciate your time today. It is Saturday, March 21st, 2026. And it is also the 20th anniversary of 3121, that album project by Prince. But today we were talking all things Purple Rain. And I also have the tour book. This is actually the tour book as things fall off the shelf. These, this is the actual tour book, a copy of the tour book that has pictures. And the artistry with which things were created for the movie, and as well as for the public to promote what was going on. All right, we've got Wendy and Lisa. Okay, Bobby Z and Brown Mark. This is Greg pull up. Big Chick the Bodyguard. And there's Dr. Fink. And this was the poster that came in the center for Purple Rain. And for the Purple Rain Tour, World Tour, 1984-1985. But thank you for your time today. As we talked about all things Purple Rain, and we'll see you next weekend when we dive more into the legacy and impact of Prince and the related artists. And there's so many artists that are connected to him, whether he produced them, whether he wrote for them, whether they were part of the entourage. And so we'll get a chance to dive into that. But have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you for being with us. Collecting Prince, the podcast. Brian Walton. Have a wonderful day.